September 1944, Western France near the Lier River. A German general stands at the edge of collapse, weighing a decision that will determine the fate of thousands. General Bo Henning-Stur commands nearly 20,000 German troops, isolated, undersupplied, and trapped deep behind rapidly advancing American lines. There is no road back to Germany, no realistic hope of victory, and no strategic value left in continuing the fight. His men can still fight, and they can still die, but only for nothing. Stur chooses another path, one meant to save lives instead of wasting them. He decides to surrender his entire force, not in panic or disorder, but through a formal and deliberate act. This surrender, however, will take place inside the operational zone of General George Patton, a commander known for speed, aggression, and relentless pressure. How Patton responds will echo far beyond one river valley, and far beyond one defeated general. Patton's decision will shape how other German commanders view surrender itself. It will also reveal a side of him that history rarely highlights. Behind the fierce reputation stood a leader who understood that respect, used wisely, could achieve what firepower sometimes could not. This is a story of the largest German surrender to American forces in Western Europe, and why Patton's response mattered long after September 1944. By September 1944, the German situation in Western France had collapsed beyond recovery. After the Allied breakout from Normandy in August, Patton's Third Army surged eastward at a pace that stunned even its own commanders. German defensive lines disintegrated, supply routes were severed, and entire regions were bypassed by fast-moving American armor. The war no longer moved at Germany's pace, and the front lines no longer made sense. General Stur commanded a mixed force of regular army units and support formations scattered across Western France. These were not elite panzer divisions or hardened assault troops, but occupation forces and garrison units meant to hold territory. They were trained for control and logistics, not for mobile warfare against vast American columns backed by overwhelming air power. Now, they were completely cut off from reinforcement or escape. The Lier River lay behind them, its crossings firmly controlled by American forces. Patton's tanks stood between Stur and Germany, while French resistance fighters hunted isolated German detachments. Above them, Allied aircraft ruled the skies, turning any large-scale movement into a death sentence. Stur's command existed inside a tightening vice, with no way out. He faced three choices, and each carried grim consequences. The first option, fighting east toward German lines, was militarily impossible and strategically pointless. His troops lacked fuel, equipment, and mobility, and American air power would destroy them in the open. The second option, dispersing into the countryside for guerrilla warfare, offered only prolonged suffering and inevitable death. Such resistance would change nothing, and would guarantee brutal reprisals from resistance fighters seeking revenge. The third option, surrender, carried its own dangers and moral weight. Under Hitler's orders, surrender was treated as treason, and officers who capitulated risked execution. Families could be punished, reputations erased, and honor destroyed by the regime. But Stur was not a fanatic. He was a professional soldier shaped by reality. He understood that his force had no remaining value to Germany's war effort. Continuing to fight would kill thousands of men, German and American alike, for no strategic gain. Logic, not ideology, guided his thinking. The real question was whether surrender could happen without disgrace or abuse. Stur reached out to advancing American units through intermediaries, carefully and deliberately. His message was direct, clear, and grounded in military professionalism. He commanded roughly 20,000 men ready to surrender, but only under defined conditions. Stur requested assurances that his soldiers would be treated according to the Geneva Conventions. He wanted a formal surrender, conducted with military dignity, not chaos or revenge. Most importantly, he insisted his men not be handed over to French forces eager to settle old scores. This was surrender, but not unconditional humiliation. The proposal moved up the chain of command and reached Patton's headquarters. This was Patton's operational area, and a surrender this size required his approval. Within his staff, Opinions were divided. Some officers argued a defeated enemy deserved no negotiation, only unconditional submission. Patton saw it differently. 20,000 German soldiers removed from the war without a single American casualty was not a problem. It was an opportunity. Every surrender meant fewer firefights, fewer ambushes, and fewer American graves. Accepting Sturr's terms cost nothing and delivered enormous strategic value. Patton also understood something deeper, something many commanders overlooked. How an army treats surrendering enemies directly affects whether others choose to surrender. If capitulation led to abuse or execution, German units would fight to the last man. If surrender meant lawful treatment, rational commanders would choose survival over annihilation. Patton approved the surrender. He ordered his subordinates to conduct it strictly under the laws of war. German soldiers were to be treated as prisoners of war, protected by international conventions. No favors, no cruelty, only disciplined professionalism. The message this would send across France was worth far more than any act of revenge. On September 16, 1944, near the Liar River, nearly 20,000 German troops marched toward American lines in formation. They moved as organized military units, disciplined and controlled, not as a defeated mob. At their head walked General Sturr and his staff officers. American units under Patton's Third Army accepted the surrender formally and professionally. Sturr declared the capitulation of his command according to military protocol. American officers acknowledged it without spectacle or insult. Weapons were surrendered, troops organized, and processing began methodically. Sturr and his officers were treated as enemy combatants who had chosen honor over pointless death. This was not generosity. It was adherence to the laws governing professional armies. The distinction mattered more than anyone realized at the time. American soldiers treated the prisoners firmly, but correctly. German troops who expected abuse or execution instead received food and medical care. They were processed through established prisoner procedures, not improvised punishment. The contrast between fear and reality was profound, and word spread quickly. Within days, German units across France learned what had happened. A general had surrendered 20,000 men, and every one of them had been treated properly. There were no atrocities, no revenge killings, no violations. Only professional conduct between opposing armies. Patton never met Sturr personally, and he was not present at the surrender. He offered no special privileges beyond what international law required. But his decision shaped events far beyond that single day. In the months that followed, German units surrendered in growing numbers. Some were isolated garrisons. Others were battalions or entire regiments facing reality. American intelligence officers noticed a clear pattern. German commanders increasingly requested surrender to American forces specifically. They believed Americans followed the rules. Sturr's surrender became the reference point. German officers mentioned it during negotiations, citing the treatment received. Through fragmented communication networks, the story spread relentlessly. A rational choice now existed. This had real military value. Every surrendered soldier was one fewer enemy to fight. Every capitulation secured territory without bloodshed. Every rational decision saved American lives. The cumulative effect shortened the campaign in France and reduced casualties on both sides. Patton's decision created conditions that encouraged surrender rather than fanatic resistance. This was strategy operating beyond the battlefield. It reflected a deeper understanding of war. Despite his aggressive image, Patton respected professional soldiers, even enemy ones. He despised Nazi ideology and showed no mercy toward SS units or fanatical loyalists. But officers who followed military tradition earned his respect. To Patton, they were warriors in different uniforms. When such soldiers chose surrender over pointless death, Patton believed they deserved lawful treatment. This was not sentimentality. It was worldview. Wars were fought by men under orders, not abstract ideologies. Honor still mattered, even in defeat. After surrendering, Sturr and his men entered standard prisoner of war channels. Sturr spent the remainder of the war in American camps. He was cooperative, professional, and consistent with his decision. He was detained, not abused, as international law required. After the war, Sturr faced trial in Germany for surrendering his command. Under Nazi law, capitulation was treated as treason. The post-war court recognized reality instead of ideology. His situation in September 1944 had been hopeless. Continuing to fight would have achieved nothing but death. Sturr was pardoned and lived quietly in post-war Germany. When asked, he maintained his decision had been correct. He always acknowledged one critical factor: American adherence to the laws of war made surrender possible. If he had expected execution or torture, he might have fought on, not for victory, but for honor as he understood it. Professional treatment gave him the option to choose life. Sturr's surrender removed nearly 20,000 soldiers from combat without a single shot fired. Its strategic value was immense, but its deeper significance lies in what it reveals about leadership. Patton understood that discipline and law could be weapons. He knew that how you treat defeated enemies shapes those still fighting. Respect the laws of war, and rational commanders will surrender. Abused prisoners, and even defeated armies will fight to the death. This is not weakness, it is sophistication. Modern doctrine now codifies this insight. Geneva Conventions and the laws of armed conflict are strategic tools. Patton understood this instinctively in 1944. His decision aligned morality with military efficiency. In September 1944, General Bo Henning Sturr surrendered nearly 20,000 German troops. Patton approved the surrender and enforced lawful treatment. The decision saved lives, accelerated victory, and reshaped enemy behavior. It added a hidden dimension to Patton's legacy. This story matters because it reveals a truth often overlooked. The most effective commanders are not always the most ruthless. Sometimes they are the most disciplined. Patton knew when to destroy and when to accept surrender. That is not mercy alone. That is military leadership at its highest level.